Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second ever virtual edition of Zach on Sports. I am your host, Zach Gershman. Sports fans need content, and we are here to give it to you. With me today is ESPN and Yes Network's own Mr. Ryan Ruocco. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
Of course. So I have to ask you. You're a play-by-play announcer, both baseball, basketball. You do boxing for DAZN. What is a play-by-play announcer doing during a pandemic where there are no sports?
Man, hoping that their voice is getting much needed rest.
Yes.
But no, what's funny, man, is like whether it's something like this, talking to you, or my podcast I host with CC Sabathia, R2C2, or being a guest on other shows, or occasional one-off assignments for my networks or digital content that we're creating. There's still been, daily content that I've been involved in, or daily work. I mean, rarely is there more than a day that goes by where I'm not recording something. It's just not play by play, and so I miss it desperately. But I'm doing enough, and while it's much lighter lifting, I'm doing enough to at least feel like, okay, I'm keeping busy.
So speaking of the pandemic, speaking of COVID-19, you were a part of a history-breaking game. You, alongside NBA analyst Doris Burke, Tom Rinaldi, were broadcasting the Dallas Mavericks versus Denver Nuggets game when the news broke that the NBA season was put on pause. You've said that entering that day, it felt a little bit different. Can you talk about that day when you're entering the arena?
Yeah, I mean, I think where I really started to notice things feeling different was travel. Just traveling around the country at that period of time started to feel, it just started to feel like eerie. And, besides just seeing the precautions that everybody was taking, myself included, wiping seats down, I mean, for me, I wasn't going to the bathroom on the plane anymore, like that kind of stuff. There was also, there was just like an energy, it was hard to describe how it, tangibly visualized, but you could just feel this sort of sense of, fear, and just an eerie sense of being on the brink of something historically scary. And so we, I think all who were traveling at that time felt that. And it was something that Doris and I talked a lot about that day leading into the game. I had flown in that morning from LA to Dallas because I had done the Nets and the Lakers the night before, which the Nets had won in dramatic fashion against the Lakers. And I got in, and just going to the airport that morning, and I had noticed it, even the week before, maybe 2 weeks before, but it, was increasingly coming to a crescendo. And so there was just there was a feeling of unease and a feeling of, we know things are about to change. How much longer will we even be broadcasting games, on site in person? And I think we kind of really felt that energy in that moment.
Have you mentally prepared yourself if you do have to broadcast games virtually, what that's going to be like? Or if you go into a stadium and there are no fans, have you mentally prepared yourself?
I don't say this in a self-serving way, but I say it in an honest way. I really believe if that happens, it puts even more of a premium on the broadcast team, because now, you don't have the supplementary help to sort of amplify the energy of the game, right? You need to create it even more so yourself. I've called games in empty stadiums or arenas before, not completely empty, but empty enough. And I've also called games off monitors before. And is it a challenge? Yes, it is. Are there things that you can't duplicate, compared to being on site and having a crowd? Yeah, for sure. But do I believe that we will still be able to do a great broadcast and one that serves the fans? I know we will. And so I'm sure at some point during the process, I'd be wistful for the days of being on site and having, the sound of a full arena. But I'm just excited to call games in any way. So if it's from a studio or even if it's from our own homes, I'll be excited and ready to bring the same kind of energy I would on site.
That's exciting to just think about. Live sports could be coming back soon. So incredibly excited for that. But let's take a step back to your college days when you entered the doors at Fordham University. Talk to us, share with us some of your most memorable experiences at WFUV and some of the mentors you had along the way.
Man, I mean, it's my whole collegiate experience. When I think of it, the first thing I think of is WFUV. Bob Aarons, my mentor, who was the great executive producer of WFUV Sports for years, was self-picked by Marty Glickman. He taught me play-by-play, and he taught me how to be precise and how to, really critically evaluate myself and how to demand more out of myself and what sounds good and what doesn't. I'll never forget the first time I did a demo. It was of a football game, and I'm listening to it back in the car on a tape player. I was on an actual cassette tape, and I had my parents take the car. We had one car left that still had like a cassette player. Take that so we could listen to it. So we're driving around the Bronx listening to it after the game. And I'm like, man, I crushed it. Like, oh, I'm on my way. And we go to a nice dinner or whatever. And the next day I have Bob listen to it. And I'm like, what do you think? And he's like, and he just shreds it apart.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, here I was. I thought I was like, the next Vince Scully. What happened? And he set the standard. He gave me very pointed things I had to do to get better. And he also kind of set the standard for not doling out praise easily and knowing that I was going to have to really improve and get better and better in order to, win his good graces. So that's something I always think about, being in the Yankees clubhouse, walking in for the first time in spring training in 2006 and just being amazed, being like, oh my gosh, I'm in the Yankees clubhouse. Like, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And just that incredible feeling, being in, such a sacred place, hallowed ground, in a place that, if you asked me as a kid, what's the number one place you'd want to be? I'd say Yankees clubhouse. Then I was there. I'm like, what? So that, having conversations or asking questions to Andy Pettit and Derek Jeter and Mariano Rivera and, my heroes growing up, Jorge Posada, just like mind blown. But the thing that I take most out of my experience at WFUV was, the road trips with my closest friends, Bobby Coyle, Justin Shackle, and Lou Baricelli, three of my closest friends in the world, Tim Bassett, Brian McFadden, Brian Clark. These are all guys who to this day I'm good friends with. And just being on the road, going and calling games, and all of us having this deep, passionate, investment in love and broadcasting and sharing that and in sports, and then getting to be, siloed together to go do what we love and have these experiences in different cities. Like, I remember at the end of my senior year thinking, like, I wonder if it'll ever, be this good. Like, as much as I love broadcasting and I want to go be on ESPN and the Yes Network and et cetera, I wonder if it'll ever be this fun. I'm getting to do what I love, feel like I'm getting good at it. I feel so passionate about it, and I get to do it with my best friends in the world, my college best friends. How could it get better than this? And, that to me is an experience I always think about in regard to Fordham and WFUV and sort of what's most memorable.
So you mentioned your senior year, and you mentioned the great Marty Glickman, one of the pioneers of sports broadcasting in America. Your senior year at Fordham, you won the Marty Glickman Award, which is given to the best student play-by-play announcer who best exemplifies best examples, the Hall of Fame broadcaster, Marty Glickman. What was it about Marty's teachings that really resonated with you?
I think, being taught by Bob was probably the closest thing to being taught by Marty. And it just, his passion for description, his insistence upon vivid description, and his phrase, consider the listener. When you're doing a broadcast on radio, consider the listener. Everything you do needs to consider the listener. If I have wonderfully gorgeous descriptions, but I don't give you time and score, it's useless. The listener needs to know the time and score more than anything, and if I, am so insistent upon indulging in my own love of language that I fall behind the action, and the audience is hearing the crowd react, but I'm still describing something else because I want you to get in all these words, well, that's not going to serve the audience. I need to consider the listener. And so, just being the eyes for the audience listening on radio, considering the listener, describing things, time and score as much as possible. Also, Marty used to say, if you're doing TV, you like the scorecard. That's something I use all the time on television as well. So, so many pointed things, but those would be sort of the overarching things from Marty that I think about.
You also previously mentioned CC Sabathia, your podcast with him, the R2C2 podcast. How did that start? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, man. CC and I developed a really organic relationship. Just from me being in the clubhouse at Yankee Stadium and doing the scoreboard hosting. And he came in 2009. I was hosting Yankees On Demand, which was the in-house video for the Yankees, as well as their scoreboard hosting. I was also doing stats for the Yes Network at the time. So I was at the stadium for every single home game. And we were developing this new video content for the Yankees. And we ended up also doing some shoots on the road. And CC was just so agreeable, so amenable. We did a shoot at his house in Vallejo where we were there all day. About midway through that first year, he was with the Yankees, and he loved sports and does love sports. There's a huge sports fan, and me and him just bonded talking basketball. It's when the Lakers were in the finals that summer, and me and him were both rooting for the Lakers. Me because of Kobe, and and him being a Laker fan, and we just connected over that, and just talk sports, and develop this relationship, and then. As I started hosting my own shows on ESPN radio, he would say, man, we got to do something someday. I'd be like, yeah, I would love to. And I stopped hosting my shows, but at that time we started to say, hey, we should do a podcast together someday. I'm like, yeah. And then in 2017, he just reached out to me during spring training. He was like, I want to do this podcast now, man. And I was like, all right, well, if you're serious about it, let's have a conversation about what it would look like. There were certain things I just knew I wasn't going to go back to after hosting daily radio. I didn't want to go back to making mountains out of molehills or, exaggerating or having gotcha type stuff. I wanted it to be about storytelling and perspective and honesty and fun. And he had all the same desires. And so he said, hey, let's do it. And so we did.
One of the best parts about this business is you got to have fun. Sports, you got to have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you don't, then the audience won't either,
Exactly.
So you need to.
I completely understand and agree with that. Now, we have a segment here on Zach on Sports called Beyond the Mic where we get to know Ryan Ruocco, the person. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
So towards the end of your R2C2 podcast with Doris Burke recently, you asked her a fan question, which was, now that The Last Dance is over, what 10-part docuseries would you want to see? I'm going to ask the same question to you. What 10-part docuseries would you want to see?
I think I'd love to see one on the core four Yankees and the building of that dynasty and what those teams went through. And I don't know if it'd be drama filled, but it would definitely tailor to my own interests. So I'd say that. I'd be curious to see, the one I really would love to do is on Hubie Brown, my colleague and good friend. And I don't know if Hubie would ever be comfortable with doing something like that because he really cherishes his stories and the privacy of the circle with which he shares them. But he is a treasure. And when I say, Hubie Brown is the single greatest storyteller I've ever met in my life. Not only that, he has more stories than anybody, I would say, right now in any of the major sports worlds. And so I just think there can be something incredible built around him. I don't know if it's something I just have gotten the feeling it's not something, he'd probably be interested in. But I do think it'd be great.
You got to bring it up to him. That'd be very
I know.
awesome to see.
I know. It would be.
So, from my understanding, you're also a very big food guy. Being a New York native, food's obviously very important. When you get your game schedule and you travel all across the country, when you get your game schedule and you see which cities you're going to, do you ever circle a game, not necessarily because of the matchup, but because there's a specific restaurant you want to go to?
Definitely, man.
What's that restaurant?
I do. I mean, when I go to Salt Lake City, going to Walters, which is it's like Walter but with a V. Amazing Italian spot. I mean, Steve Kerr's talked about it at times. Greg Popovich as well. You never think like great Italian in Salt Lake City, but it is. It is amazing, man. It's so good. So I'd say that is on the list. If I'm in Orlando, there's an Italian spot called Cristini's, which is incredible. It's just in a little strip mall. You'd never suspect it of being excellent, but it is excellent, and it's a great experience. So I always look at that. There are certain places in LA. There's a lot of reasons I like going to LA. I have so many good friends out there and the weather and everything, but there's a few restaurants out there that I definitely love. One, Laurel Hardware, I've always loved. It's kind of a chic spot, but it's really good. And then Everly is a spot that I love. It's just cool, charming, both in West Hollywood. What else? What's another place where I kind of like circle the restaurant aspect of things? I mean, it's funny because I have places everywhere. I really do at this point. My dad is a foodie as well, so I've got him from him. And then, you go to these cities so much, you end up picking them up. There's a place now. Well, I'll tell you what, when I'm in Seattle, man, Matt's at the Market. Oh, I love that place. And then Walrus and the Carpenter, unbelievable. But Minnesota as well. Minnesota, there's Spoon and Stable. Oh my gosh, incredible. and Italian place, Bar La Grassa, that's great. So yeah, there's quite a few that like when I see I'm going to that city, I know, I can eat there. So I better have a few good dieting days before I get there.
Now I know when I get out of PA, I got to rewatch this video just to know where I'm going next. Am I going to this place, that place?
Chart it down a little bit. Yeah.
Now that's awesome. Now I'm a skinny kid, but Italian food's always it's good. It's Italian food.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're going to go into a quick rapid fire to wrap up the episode here. So three quick questions, but you got to be careful with them. You're the skipper and you need one lefty in your rotation. Is it going to be CeCe or is it going to be Andy Pettitte?
Andy Pettitte. Sorry, CeCe.
CeCe's not going to like that one. Bring that one up on the podcast.
I will. I can't. You know what? I just couldn't turn down Andy. I just can't do it. I can't do it. He's my favorite athlete of all time.
I understand that. I don't think CeCe will, but I understand. So, but for the R2C2 podcast, who's the one celebrity or athlete that you would love to have on the podcast that you've yet to?
I mean, I would love to have Jay-Z. Eminem is the guy I'd love to probably most just for my own fandom, but the person who I think would create the most interesting content that I've always felt like, I really love the way he views the world and kind of views love and is Jay-Z actually. And CeCe has a friendship with him. So that's why it feels like more, even though it's unlikely, it's more plausible in my mind, and so I think I would put him at the top of the list.
That's New York native also. New York guy.
Exactly.
New York guy on a New York podcast. So, final question here. 3 seconds left in the NBA Finals. Point guard Ryan Ruocco is driving down the court. He has a wide open Michael Jordan, wide open LeBron James. Who's he passing the ball to?
MJ, no question. Absolutely. But I have to tell you.
The shot.
No. I pass it, but I have to tell you. I also think LeBron James would pass to Jordan there because LeBron –
Really?
Yeah, I do, because LeBron always makes the best basketball play, and I think he knows in that moment, the highest percentage of success is Jordan with a clean look, better jump shooter than LeBron. And I think, I think that LeBron LeBron handles those moments really well, even though narratives like to say otherwise. And so I think even LeBron would pass to Jordan for that
Wow.
shot in that
Wow.
moment. Yes.
Good analysis there. I like that. I like
Yes.
that. So that wraps up this interview. But Ryan, ESPN just announced big news today that you're involved in. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, man. We're going to be doing this Peloton All-Star ride. We have, obviously we're all starved for competition, right?
Yes.
And I mean, you open your show talking about just the need for sports, right? And like we're all in need of competition. And a lot of people have been riding their Pelotons, and their business was already booming, but has exploded since all of this, with people stuck at home looking for ways to exercise and connect and feel community. And I'm a big Peloton rider, big Peloton fan, and we basically did. We're doing two races, a men's ride and a women's ride, with 8 athletes involved in each ride from all different sports. So it's really cool seeing like cross sport competition, really big names and decorated athletes. I mean, we have Rory McIlroy, Bubba Watson, Gordon Hayward. We have an Olympic swimmer in Matt Grievers. I mean, some great people. Kyle Rudolph, the tight end for the Vikings. We have Justin Thomas, another major winner in the PGA Tour. And then former NFL players like Mike Golick Jr. and Booger McFarland, who are avid Peloton riders. And for the women, we have, I think only one of our 8 participants isn't an Olympic medalist. We have the queen of track and field in Allison Phoenix. We have Kyla Ross, who won a gold medal at 15 with the U.S. Olympic gymnastics team in 2016. Colleen Quigley, who's a steeplechase track and field Olympian, who's, just an incredible athlete. And you have Monica Puig, who, is obviously a tennis star. Victoria Azarenka as well. Both have gold medals. Monica Puig won Puerto Rico's first ever gold medal.
Wow.
So I mean, it's a loaded group of athletes, and they all have great spirits about this. They all are into the competition, and then we had specially recorded classes for them from Alex Toussaint and Robin Arzon, who recorded 20-minute classes that are just like absurdly difficult. And then Allie Love, who's a Peloton instructor, as well as the Brooklyn Nets and arena host. And I provide the commentary as if it's a game. She's my analyst. I'm the play-by-play / host. And it's really, really fun. And I think it will provide people with some much-needed competition. So that's going to be Saturday, May 30th at 1, I think it's 1 p.m. Maybe it's noon. I got to check. On ESPN. I should get that right. But it'll be Saturday, May 30th, that afternoon on ESPN. And I think it'll be a lot of fun.
And the race for Saturday now begins. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Everyone else, I'll see you guys next time on Zach on Sports.
Thanks, Zach.